And good morning, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Jennifer Britton, one part of the Remote Pathways podcast with my co host, Michelle Mullins. And we've got a very special guest today, Beth Buelow. Welcome to you, Beth. Good to see you. Nice to have you with us.
Good morning. Good morning, Jennifer, Michelle, and anyone who is joining us.
Well, we are typically so much in this asynchronous world. So we are really excited to be bringing this to all of you. Michelle, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. I'm doing what I like to call the remote shuffle. I'm puppy sitting. I'm grand puppy sitting. So I was up all night with the grand dogs while they were crated last night, in and out. So yeah, doing that remote shuffle, but glad to be here.
Fantastic. Well, I am too. I'm really excited. Again, it's April 1st, April Fool's Day, and I think this is an exciting day. It certainly is a memorable day in our family. It's the day that I came back to Canada after many years of work. So happy April Fool's Day. And I think this is a great one. We've termed this visible does not mean available. How apropos. So I'm looking forward to diving into that. As always, we have a quick warm up activity. And today we're going to take you into the Wheel of Names. So, you know how much I love our work around everything from dice to visuals. Today I've got the Wheel of Names. And what I'd like you to do is grab a pen and a piece of paper, or you can do this on your screen. We're going to do a little grounding or centering exercise with which I'm going to spin the wheel 3 times, and I'm going to give you 3 terms, 3 words. You're going to then come up with a mini storyline, just 3 or 4 sentences, but something that's going to help you get grounded in the remote space. So, Beth, Michelle, are you ready? Okay, here we go with the Wheel of Names. Let's see where we land. And our first word is connection. Connection. All right, so we're going to come off of our connection, and I'll give all 3 words first. Sort of a little bit like that game show. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to name it on YouTube.
I
Second
love
word
that
is
game show.
commitment. Commitment. Connection. Commitment. And let's see what the next word is. And here's our third spin. And our next word is, oh, how apropos, coaching.
Feeling it was going to be another C word.
I thought it was going to be cute. It's the 3 C's. All right, so let's take literally 2 minutes to come up with your own storyline. We'll use this as an intro as we kick off into our conversation today. So, connection, commitment, coaching. For everyone listening in, what is your story right now about connection, commitment, and coaching? All right. Looks like some of us are almost done. Do you need another 10 seconds maybe to wrap that up? All right. So we'll bring our special guest on first. Miss
Yes.
Buelow, what came to mind? You know what, maybe we should do an official welcome. And
Oh, sure.
we'd like to introduce Beth Buelow, who is a professional coach herself. She's also an author of The Introverted Entrepreneur and an esteemed podcaster. So it's great to have you here, Beth. And your episode is actually releasing did it release yesterday, Michelle, or is it next week?
Next week, it comes
Next
out,
week.
I believe it's the 7th. Yes.
Yeah, the 7th of
Awesome.
April. So definitely stay tuned because it's a great episode, and Beth's going to give us a little window into that today. Beth, what came up for you when you thought about connection, commitment, and coaching?
I don't know if I did this right. So going first, I'm a little nervous, but the sentences that came up for me is just, I have a commitment to a coach approach in the spirit of connection with others. And it's about, I pulled in another C, it's about curiosity, not interrogation. And it's really about showing genuine interest in other people and really listening. And another C came up with was Dale Carnegie. And I think he talks about, showing a genuine interest in other people is what leads to true connection. And so that's where my thoughts went here at 7:06 Eastern time in the morning.
Good morning. Well, what a great way to frame out our conversation today, right? Again, I think so much about what we talk about at the Remote Pathways podcast is how do we create that connection? How do we help people do their best work? And I know that's a big part of your work, whether you're working with coaches or you're working with your own clients. So Beth, great to have you. There's no right way in coaching. That's what
That's right. It's all good.
Good. It's all good. And, we all see things in different ways, which is why I love an exercise like this. So Michelle, what did you come up with?
I said, I am committed to connecting with other fabulous remote workers through dynamic coaching conversations in Q2.
Wow.
It's the start of Q2 today, right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I didn't even put that dot together. You see, there we go. I didn't connect the dot. So here's what I added. It's all about connecting with each other via great conversations, commitment to better conversations, and coaching is all about the conversation. So obviously a big overarch of another C, which is the word conversation. And that wasn't planned. I always find it interesting. I have not done the wheel of life in that way, but whenever we use Rory Story Cubes or we use something else, there always seems to be a great tie-in to our theme of the week. So let's go to our sort of our roadmap here. Just a reminder, and thanks, Michelle, for letting us know we are in the heart of Q2. So at Remote Pathways Podcast, we've been following, of course, Plan, Do, Track, my workbook planner. Q1, we were focusing all about focus and how do we get some initial traction going? How do we really look and clarify on what's important? And as we step into Q2 over the next couple of months, we're going to be having in the background the mindset or the whole philosophy of experimentation and how that's so critical for all of us in the remote space. Even a year into long-term remote work, my guess is every day you're finding new things that you're trying out, learning from, and continuing to adjust or iterate. And so experimentation really is, I think, pervasive. I'd love to just hear from both of you, like what experiments have you been engaging with recently? And I know for myself as a business, marketing, always an experiment, definitely always an experiment. The other experimentation that I've been doing is in some of my coaching groups, actually. We've been experimenting with different ways to keep in touch all winter with different groups. So some groups we do email. Other groups we have a secret Mighty Networks group. One group has moved over to WhatsApp. And so it's always interesting to see how, different approaches really can meet people where they're at. And I think that's so important with our work in the remote space. So Michelle, I'll go to you first, like experimentation. Where have you been experimenting lately?
Well, again, it comes all back to the conversations. Our last planning session that we did with the Remote Pathways, right after the call, it inspired me to get all these little spiral bound notebooks in the same color for the quarter. And so I chose yellow because yellow always reminds me of conversation. So Q2 is an experimentation for me of celebrating conversations, great conversations. And Beth, I can't wait to check out your podcast even more because I was listening back to our episode with you and you mentioned you love courageous conversations. And I love that combination. So I can't wait to tune in more to what you have to say.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so many C's here.
Yes,
It's just the morning of the C's.
it
You
is.
got it. And so experimentation, how about you, Beth? Where have you been experimenting in your work?
Well, I've been remote now for years, like 12 years, right? Using Here we go. And using Zoom for 5 or 6. This experience of not just spending more time on it, but spending time with groups and facilitating groups online has led me to experiment more with the platform and to try to be brave and invite people into a little bit of discomfort with stretching themselves technologically. Like we got to use annotations in a group that I was facilitating. When I started out, I'm like, who's used them? And maybe half of them had, and the other half were like, where are they? And so the experimentation it's twofold. It's one, stretching our technical abilities, and then two, stretching my own adaptability as a facilitator and being able to say, okay, plan A isn't going to work. Let's go to plan B. We're not going to get hung up on this. And I'm also experimenting with virtual backgrounds. Which isn't quite as groundbreaking as what you two are doing, but I'm just, like, what can bring out some fun and connection and give people an insight into who we are, and what we choose as our backgrounds is often a piece of that. So I'm not a hunter, nor am I a fisher, but this is the motel desk of Schitt's Creek. So it's one of my pandemic discoveries, and so it makes me happy. And
It's so fun. I love that you brought that in, and it goes right back to curiosity, like you mentioned before, to be curious about people. Tell me more about your background, or Jen's
right.
fabulous background with all the radios, and it's
Exactly.
connected to your big milestone in your family today, right? With the April 1st. So I love that. So good.
Absolutely. Well, Beth, again, and just a reminder, we've made reference to it a couple times, but we haven't named it. The name of your podcast. What is the name of your podcast that you're hosting right now?
Yeah, it's called How Can I Say This? And when you say right now, it's because I did a podcast from 2010 to 18 called The Introvert Entrepreneur that was in support of the book and whatnot. But yeah, it's called How Can I Say This? And it's all about fostering more courageous conversations for connection and community. Fancy that.
Fancy that.
No, you invoked it. Well, I think what we'll do is we're going to drop into the virtual water cooler. Again, things in this space don't have to be very structured all the time. We can be very, very fluid. So just a reminder of where we've been. We had Lisa Hawashi with us a month ago, and her episode was called Going Down Rabbit Holes. And I'd invite you to think about when you have been going down the rabbit hole recently. This month, we've got Beth, of course, and that will be coming out next week. So Beth, I know you wanted to focus on something with us today. Tell us where we're going to go for a few minutes in our next phase of the conversation.
Yeah, this is, it kind of goes to pandemic lessons when you're in a, many of us have been in this lockdown or, shelter in place mode now for more than a year. And it's caused some things to need to be renegotiated and new awarenesses. And I've had several awarenesses, and I know we're going to dive into one of them that's related to this. But it's caused me to think about what is a healthy relationship. What are the components of a healthy relationship? And one of the things I noticed right away that we might not fully appreciate until it's taken away from us is that they are a balance of presence and absence. We, when we're in relationships, whether, I guess I'm speaking mostly of family-based relationships, spouses or, parents and children and whatnot. We think of togetherness, we think of connection, we think of, often we talk about there's not enough us time together. And now we've got this overload of us time together. And I think it's caused me to appreciate how there needs to be this balance of presence, being together, doing things together, sharing space, being physically present together, and absence, we need time apart. And that is part of what helps keep us to be healthy individuals, so that we're healthy individuals in the context of a relationship, as opposed to, I'm thinking of that movie, Jerry Maguire, everybody was swooning on that, you complete me. and we sometimes put so much focus on that and think that, we're two halves of the same whole. Well, healthy relationships are two wholes coming together to form something bigger. And in order to be two wholes that are able to be healthy, they need time apart. And so there's this balance. And I think that kind of feeds into a little bit, what we talked about, which was this visible does not mean available. We're renegotiating our absence and presence with one another that we previously had established. And now that we're in this same space all the time together, how do we navigate that new reality in a way that doesn't destroy the relationship?
Really,
So that's what came up for me.
I love that. And it's so interesting. I think that notion of contrast, right? If we have too much of something without a counterpoint, do we appreciate it? And that was actually something, it was a bit of a sub mantra, like I think mantras are a really important part of our world. But if I think back to, the first part of my career, and given that today is this milestone of like pivoting out of that world, like I think for many years I was very conscious of, my work was really often on the fringes of the greatest things in the world and the not so greatest things. I worked in post-disaster management. And so it was about rebuilding countries after a huge natural disaster. You would see the worst of the world, but you would also see the best of the world. Yeah. And I think many nights I would go to bed thinking, I would be so appreciative of seeing that range, because it reminded me of just how important it is to be human, to have that range of experience. And if we just have too much of one thing, do we then appreciate the other thing? So it's interesting you bring this up today on this anniversary day for me. But it goes back, just as you said, how are we and who are we in relationship? And this could be in business relationships as well. This could be in, as a team. How are we really creating that interdependence, not the independence or the dependence that we see really playing out? And I think that's, to bring it back to the remote space too, right? One of the things that I think is so empowering about remote work, that the one side of the coin is just, the autonomy that can be afforded with great leadership and great teamwork. That is not necessarily what we've seen for the last year. But I think there has been really a paradigm shift. It is a paradigm shift as well. So thank you, Beth, for bringing us quite a deep conversation on an April Fool's Day. But Michelle, what are you getting sparked by?
Yeah, I think this is a great conversation topic. I love what you said, renegotiating, right? Renegotiating our relationships in the remote space. And I hope leaders are listening in, that this is valuable for your team. Like Jennifer said, that it's okay that you don't see them all the time, that they're not visible all the time. That time of absence is important to get work done, or just for self-care. I know a lot of people, even introverts, right? I'm an introvert. I appreciated the remote space because it kind of gave me that away space, and I could choose to when I wanted to engage. But then suddenly when everyone else is in the remote space, it's not such a lone space anymore. So it truly is a season of renegotiating. I love that. And I think now, we're a year into this, that hopefully the grip has released a little bit of the fear has relaxed. And now it seems like it would be the perfect opportunity to have those great conversations around this. So I love that you've brought this to the table today. Very good.
And I love, Michelle, that it's like in the workspace, like the family space is one balance, the workspace is another. And it's more about like, well, you used to be present all the time and now there's absence. And how do you trust? It's a renegotiation of trust, as much as anything else.
That trust, safety, and connection. We often say, Beth, one of our most
Mhm.
listened to episodes here at the Remote Pathways podcast has been our episode on trust, safety, and connection. And I
Yeah.
think that is something that continues to, as time progresses, continues to be a real area of exploration and, reflection for a lot of
Mhm.
teams. So,
Yeah.
well, fantastic. Well, we've got a few more minutes. Anything else, Beth, that you wanted to bring to our virtual water cooler today that you think might be interesting to explore?
Well, I loved when we had our podcast conversation that Michelle, I believe it was you that put words to a longer description I made about how another renegotiation that I just alluded to about visibility does not equal availability. And that's another thing that I feel like I've had to renegotiate, and maybe others have too, with your, working at home, especially if one person is used to working at home and the other is not, which is the case in our household. And this can go with children, they're used to being in school and now they're here. And that it brought me back to when, my husband and I first got married, and I was still fairly new in the workforce at the time. And I would call him in the middle of the day just to say hi. And I could tell often by the tone of his voice, hello, like, okay, this is not a good time. And I remember him having talk about a courageous conversation. Like, it's really disruptive when you call me in the middle of the day, because often I'm immersed in something and I can't just switch gears, and I don't want to be, rude and whatnot. So it's better if you don't call me in the middle of the day unless there's something that's needed. And so we learned that together, Then with him being home and remote himself, I had to relearn, like, just because I see him sitting in his chair at his desk working doesn't mean I can just pop over and say, hey, how's it going? Pretend that there is a bubble, there are walls, that respecting each other's space again, and not assuming that just because I see him that I have to say something, or vice versa. He actually is very good about not doing it. I think he gets very absorbed. He's writing something, or preparing for a big phone call. So that's just been another one that I think has been really interesting, and I so appreciated just that very succinct way of reminding myself visibility does not equal availability.
So well, so well said. And I found myself last night. It happens a lot with my son, and so he every day is a little different here. He's in high school, so they are going every other day, every other morning, and then but last night he had a guitar lesson. Right, he plays guitar, and he continues to do lessons with his teacher on Zoom. And so I was coming back in thinking, oh yeah, I'll just go and make some dinner. And I realized as I'm entering the house, oh, it's guitar time. And so I had to like enter the house, go straight out to the garage, went out, and then like showed back up like 2 hours later, no dinner, but I'd gotten all my stuff done. But it was like, what do I do? Like he's not available, but I've got stuff to do. So it's also like, yeah, renegotiation all the time, like routine, no routine, and or different routines.
Different routines, yeah.
Different routines every day. So that keeps it fresh, though, right? That keeps it fresh. So
Yeah, I think it's been healthy because it brings up, again, conversations that maybe you hadn't had before, and it gives you a chance to check in and be very intentional about how you're negotiating the space together.
Yeah. And what's sort of ironic or interesting is we often say, pre-pandemic, I really, even though I love our house, I really love this house. We've been here for 12 years. I was starting to feel it was really too big, even though I run the business out of it, but it was like, it's too big. And now in the last year, we've said, actually, it's really just a great size when everyone is home. Most people are here. So yeah. It's interesting. And we'll see what happens in the next phase. So Michelle, what is this activating for you?
I just say, let everything rise to the surface, right? It is a great time for renegotiation. Let dreams arise. So much in this remote space gives opportunities for your relationships to be both challenged and to grow in the next level, right? Because we know that usually when you go through those spaces, so to speak, you can come out stronger, and with better boundaries and with better respect for one another. So you really get to know each other in a new way. You're kind of getting to know each other. I also love, I love just this conversation that you sparked on the podcast. I keep just following that strand. And this morning I thought, when I see my work and my work is visible, it doesn't mean I'm always available to do it, because I'm so
Right.
passionate about what I do. So I have to be really
Yes.
intentional about having a shutting down. The work day is done, opening the door back up. It's time to go to work. But I have to put those boundaries in place for myself too. Otherwise, my family will be burnt out on me
Yeah.
working all the time. So
Yeah. I mean, if we're lucky enough to have a space in our homes that we've got a door, dedicated office space. In the last house I was in, I put up a sign that said open and closed, and I tacked it to
nice.
the door, and I would flip it, as a way of making that boundary for myself, as well as that visibility. Yes, I'm busy now, and no, I'm closed. I'm closed for business.
Yes.
Well, I think as we step into Q2, that's going to be my big percolation. That was my big thinking this morning as I took out the garbage in the dark, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, like it's a new quarter, and yeah, when am I on and when am I off? And as we move, hopefully soon, out of next phase of lockdown, like boundaries are so key because we can't keep running at the same pace, right?
No.
Or at least I've realized I can't keep running. I've been running now for a year, and it's
Yeah.
time to like put in a few more bio breaks along the way. So with that, we are coming towards the end of our call, and I have to say it's been great to have you here with us. We've also released episode 33, which was with
Clark
it's really like,
Jacobs.
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, okay, yeah. So great conversation around working from anywhere. What do you want to say about that episode?
Yeah, that was great because I love the invitation he gave us to consider our workspace being your entire community. It got us out of our homes into the world. So I just love that invitation, and I encourage you to listen to the episode because it'll spark some ideas and hear what he's doing with FlexDesk.
Fascinating, really, really fascinating. And I know Michelle and I have also been talking, I think sparked by that, just, about mobility, right? I think the greatest part of
Yes.
remote work has always been the mobility that it's afforded. And while in the last year, many of us have been stay in place, I think hopefully soon, maybe in the next 3 to 6 months, for most people around the world, depending on where you are. And I know you're different in the US than we are in Canada right now. Like the idea of, yes, I can move somewhere is just so appealing, so appealing. So here's another little tidbit. And if you are following along at our Facebook page, mentoring is usually a different relationship than coaching and supervision. Think about how you are engaging with mentoring. And mentoring, mentors provide great insights and advice based on their own work experience. Today, we went into conversations. Mentoring is yet another important frame or element in this space. So that's what's happening over on Facebook. We didn't plan this. Communication is one of the cornerstones of exceptional remote work. So, as always, Michelle, I have so enjoyed our conversation. We've got a conversation sparker this week. What's your favorite communication platform? So, maybe we'll wrap up here. With all that you do every day, all the different conversations you're having, what's your favorite communication platform right now, Michelle?
It remains Zoom just because I can go audio or visual or share a screen, and plus everyone knows about it now. So you can have more friends on it. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And how about you, Beth? What's your favorite communication platform?
Well, I echo Michelle's point. Zoom's flexibility and all the little bells and whistles. It seems like they're always working to improve it. So new things to explore and keep it fresh. So that and honestly, I know it's not remote, but just being able to be face to face with people in a circle
yes.
is
Oh, well said,
is
Beth.
actually my favorite.
Absolutely. Well, with my background today, I've got the radios up. That's how communication or what communication looked like way back in 1992 when I started my remote work. It was two-way long range radio. So it didn't look like these, but it was those old Army radios. And I think, like we've come a long way, but the foundations are still the same. And it's got to come back to relationship, which is what I think I always enjoy about our morning community calls here at the Remote Pathways podcast. So if you've been listening in, thank you for taking some time to listen in
Yes.
with us. We really would look forward to your comments. So do comment on this YouTube video. Do head on over to Facebook to comment as well. We're always looking forward. And our next session for the month is actually a planning session. That's going to take place on April 22nd. And that is going to be, I believe, in the morning time, right, Michelle? 7:30? We're doing it at
7:30.
7:30. We're
Yes.
going back to doing a monthly planning session. Last month, we, of course, did our quarterly planning session. And we'd love for you to come and join us. It's just $20. And all of that money goes into, it feeds forward into the podcast to continue our podcasting journey. So reserve your seat at the virtual table, remotepathways.com/planning. And Beth, it's been a pleasure to have you here. I didn't share this, but I first met Beth maybe 4 years ago. We'd got to sit down at a dinner table in, I believe it was in Washington, D.C.
It was in Washington, D.C.
Washington,
Oh.
D.C. And we had a lovely dinner together along with some other speakers at a conference we were part of. And I'm just so glad that our paths have connected again, Beth. I really love your work, love your podcast. I can't tell you how many times I've been out walking in the last couple of years, first with your introverted entrepreneur podcast, and more recently with your new one. Just like, you have such a great presence, and I
Oh,
so
thank you.
appreciate what you bring to the podcast space. So thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you. From one podcaster to another. Yeah, thank you for everything you're doing and the gracious space you're creating for our learning.
Our pleasure. Michelle, as always, you get final words.
Yeah, if you'll kick it up a slide, I think I've got Beth's podcast thumbnail on
Oh,
there.
there we go.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
apologize. It's a little blurry. Yeah, but sometimes those visual cues help when you're dancing in that pod water thumbnail water. So hopefully that will pop out. Can't wait to take a deep dive. As Jennifer said, she couldn't wait to get you on our podcast. She was just talking about how wonderful you are. And now I get to know you in person, and I couldn't agree more. So thanks for
Thank you.
joining us.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
All right. And I think that's a great place to wrap up. So everyone, continue doing well, being well, and we will see you again next time at the Remote Pathways. Have a good day, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.